Let's dive into the story set in 2018. Picture a small, cozy town nestled by the coast, quiet, filled with familiar faces, a place where everyone knows each other's name, for better or worse. You know the type, right? Those quaint streets with coffee shops that serve the same regulars every day and where life moves at a pace so gentle, it almost feels frozen in time. Our main character? Emily. She's in her early 30s, a lively, bright-eyed woman with an infectious laugh and that rare gift for making people feel genuinely heard. She's got this energy that fills a room, a mix of warmth and determination. Emily works as an elementary school teacher, a job she loves because, well, it gives her purpose. She cares deeply for her students, and it's one of the reasons people in town respect her so much. And then there's David. David is Emily's husband, and on paper, they seem like the perfect pair. He's a few years older, with that calm, grounded presence that balances Emily's spark. David works as an accountant, a job that's less than thrilling but pays the bills and keeps things steady. They've been together for about a decade now, married for 5 of those years. The two of them are the kind of couple people describe as solid. No fireworks, but no storms either. Just a stable, steady relationship, at least from the outside looking in. But here's where it gets interesting. There's been this tiny, almost imperceptible shift in the air lately. It's like when you know a storm is coming because of that strange quiet beforehand. That's where Emily finds herself now. She's noticing things. Small things at first, barely enough to raise an eyebrow. David's been coming home a bit later than usual. Not crazy late, but enough for her to wonder. And when he does come home, he seems distracted, a little distant. He brushes it off, saying work's been intense, a new client here, a project deadline there. Emily, being Emily, brushes it off too. She trusts him. They've been together for too long, through too much, for her to start doubting now. But here's the thing. There's only so much you can ignore before the little things start to pile up. Now, let's pause for a second here, because this is the part of the story where you might think, maybe she's overthinking it. And sure, it's easy to think that, but let's get into her shoes. Imagine the love of your life, someone you've spent years building a life with, starts to feel like a stranger, even in the smallest ways. The familiar starts to feel foreign. It's subtle, but it's there, lurking in the background. One night, Emily decides to surprise David with a nice dinner. She's thinking a romantic, candlelit setup at home, just the two of them. It's been ages since they had a quiet evening together, and she misses those easy, intimate moments. She even picks up his favorite dessert, a decadent chocolate mousse from the local bakery. She spends hours setting everything up, and she's excited, genuinely hopeful this will bring a bit of that old spark back. But David doesn't come home on time. He's hours late, and when he finally walks through the door, he's flustered, almost guilty. He's got this look on his face, like he knows he messed up. Emily, holding back her disappointment, asks him about work, trying to make sense of why he's been so distant. David gives her this vague explanation about a late meeting and then excuses himself, saying he's exhausted and heading straight to bed. Emily's left there, standing in their dimly lit kitchen, the candles flickering around her. And it's in that moment she feels it, a crack. Something that was once solid, steady, unshakable, now feels fragile. A few days later, Emily's out with her best friend, Sarah. Sarah's been her rock for years. They've known each other since high school, and Sarah has a no-nonsense personality that Emily admires. The two of them are having coffee at their usual spot, and Emily, unable to shake this nagging feeling, opens up about David's strange behavior. Sarah listens intently, her brow furrowing with concern. She's not the type to jump to conclusions, but even she raises an eyebrow when Emily tells her about David's lateness and that weird, guilty look on his face the other night. Maybe he's just stressed, you know? Sarah offers, but there's a tinge of doubt in her voice. Or, maybe you should ask him directly. Sometimes guys don't even realize they're acting different until you call them out on it. Emily nods, and for a moment, she feels a bit silly. Maybe she is overthinking. Maybe it's just work, and David's too caught up to notice how his behavior is affecting her. But still, the doubt lingers. It's there when she wakes up in the morning, when she goes about her day, when she sits down to dinner with him and notices his eyes drifting elsewhere. One weekend, Emily suggests they go away together. She hopes that a change of scenery, some time away from the daily grind, might help them reconnect. David agrees, albeit a bit reluctantly. They drive up the coast to a cozy bed and breakfast by the beach, a spot they used to visit in their early days. At first, it feels like old times. They laugh, reminisce, and for a while, Emily feels that warmth she's missed. But then, as they're sitting by the fire, David's phone buzzes. He glances at it, a flash of something unreadable crossing his face, and quickly tucks it away. Emily notices. She notices because, well, when you love someone, you pick up on these things. She feels her stomach twist, but she doesn't say anything. Instead, she brushes it off, telling herself it's probably nothing. But later that night, when David's asleep, Emily's curiosity gets the better of her. She reaches for his phone, feeling a pang of guilt but unable to stop herself. She scrolls through his messages, her heart pounding, and that's when she sees it. A name she doesn't recognize. The texts are brief, seemingly innocent, but there's a familiarity in them that makes her blood run cold. She puts the phone down, her hands shaking. So we're right where things start to get complicated. Emily's standing there, staring at David's phone in her trembling hands, her mind reeling from what she's just seen. The messages aren't overtly romantic or incriminating, but there's something there, an unsettling intimacy that doesn't sit right with her, something that feels off, like a piece of a puzzle that doesn't quite fit. And here's the thing about moments like these, they're like sparks. They don't burn you immediately, but they ignite something in your mind, a flame of suspicion, doubt, worry. Emily can feel that flame growing, but at the same time, there's a voice inside her, telling her to give him the benefit of the doubt. After all, they've been through so much together. And who wants to believe the worst about the person they love? But the days that follow are tense. Every little thing David does feels magnified. If he's late, she wonders where he's been. If he's on his phone, she's aching to ask, "Who are you talking to?" but doesn't want to seem paranoid. She finds herself trapped in this loop of second-guessing, constantly questioning her own sanity. She's torn between wanting to trust him and the nagging fear that something isn't right. Around this time, Emily starts reaching out to her friend Sarah more frequently. Sarah's her confidant, the one person she feels she can be completely honest with. She tells Sarah about the messages, about David's strange behavior, and about how every day feels like a game of emotional tug-of-war. Sarah, being the supportive friend she is, listens intently, but there's a shift in her tone. She's becoming increasingly concerned and advises Emily to confront David directly, to address this tension head-on rather than letting it consume her. "Emily," Sarah says, "you deserve peace of mind. You can't live like this forever, wondering and worrying." Emily knows Sarah's right, but bringing it up feels terrifying. What if David's innocent? What if she's just being paranoid and this ruins everything? But then again, what if she's not? One evening, Emily decides she can't hold it in anymore. They're sitting across from each other at dinner, David absorbed in his phone, and the words just slip out. "David," she says, her voice barely a whisper, "is there something you're not telling me?" David looks up, his expression startled, as if he hadn't even noticed the tension in her voice until now. He stammers, caught off guard, and says, "What do you mean?" "Of course not, Em. What's going on?" It's a moment of truth, and Emily feels her heart racing. She doesn't want to accuse him outright, so she takes a deep breath and tells him about the messages, about how she saw them and how they've been eating away at her. David's face shifts, a flash of anger, then disappointment. He's hurt, frustrated even, that she would go through his phone. And in that moment, he turns the tables, making her feel like she's the one at fault. "Don't you trust me?" he asks, his tone a mix of hurt and indignation. And Emily, feeling cornered, starts to question everything all over again. Maybe she was wrong to look. Maybe she's made a big deal out of nothing. He tells her it's just a friend from work, someone he's been talking to about a project, and that she's making a mountain out of a molehill. But here's the thing. Even though David's words seem logical, and even though he seems genuinely hurt, there's still this feeling inside Emily that she can't shake. It's like the calm after a storm. Quiet, but uneasy. She wants to believe him. She desperately wants to feel like everything's okay. But deep down, there's this gut feeling telling her it's not over. As the weeks pass, things seem to go back to normal, or at least a version of normal. But the cracks are still there, barely visible but real. They both pretend everything's okay, but there's a distance between them now, an unspoken wall that neither of them acknowledges. And then one day, Emily's out running errands when she bumps into someone unexpected. Laura. Laura is David's colleague, the one he's mentioned a few times but never in much detail. Emily has seen her around before at office gatherings but never really paid her much attention. But now, seeing Laura in person, something clicks. Laura is warm, friendly, genuinely surprised to see Emily. They start chatting, the usual small talk, and then Laura casually mentions David. "He's been such a great friend," she says. And there's this smile, almost nostalgic, as if they share something only the two of them know about. Emily feels a pang, a flash of jealousy mixed with insecurity, and once again, the doubts start bubbling up. Later that night, Emily brings up Laura, testing the waters to see David's reaction. She mentions she ran into her, that they had a nice chat. David's reaction is subtle, a slight pause before he responds, but Emily notices. He brushes it off, saying Laura's a good friend, someone he can talk to about work when things get stressful. But Emily isn't convinced. Every day, she feels more like a stranger in her own relationship, like she's losing control of the life she thought she knew so well. She starts having trouble sleeping, her mind racing with questions, scenarios, and painful what-ifs. The doubt, the suspicion, it's like a shadow that follows her everywhere. At this point, Emily's not even sure who she is in this relationship anymore. She's tired of feeling paranoid, tired of second-guessing every word and action. But at the same time, she's scared to confront the truth, to face the possibility that her worst fears might be real. One evening, unable to bear it any longer, she decides to do something she never thought she would. She hires a private investigator. It sounds extreme even to her, but she needs answers, real, solid answers that can finally give her peace of mind. It's a last resort, a desperate move, but she feels like she has no other choice. The days that follow are nerve-wracking. Emily goes about her routine, pretending everything's fine, while internally she's holding her breath, waiting for the investigator's call. Every time her phone buzzes, her heart skips a beat. She's both terrified and eager for whatever truth might come. And then, one afternoon, she gets the call. The investigator's voice is calm but direct, and he tells her what he's found. It's not what she wanted to hear, but it's what she needed to know. David's been meeting up with Laura outside of work. It started off as just coffee breaks and late-night work meetings, but over time, it's become something more. There are photos, evidence of the two of them spending time together in ways that go beyond the boundaries of simple friendship. Emily feels her heart sink, a mix of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. She hangs up, numb, trying to process everything. This is the confirmation she dreaded but deep down suspected all along. And now, she's left with the choice. Confront him or walk away quietly. Alright, that's a heavy point to pause. If you're hooked on this story and want to hear more about what happens next, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and don't forget to leave a comment with your thoughts. What would you do in Emily's shoes? Keep watching to see how this story unfolds. Alright, here's where the story really starts heating up. Emily now has all the pieces she needs, and what's left is how she's going to handle it. The betrayal is out in the open for her, and the weight of that truth is crushing. But there's also a part of her that feels strangely calm, almost like she knew this was coming all along. She's done with the doubts, the sleepless nights, the constant guessing. She's ready for action. After getting off the phone with the investigator, Emily takes a few moments to let everything sink in. There's this eerie sense of clarity that settles over her. All those gut feelings, those late-night worries, the intuition she kept trying to ignore, they were right. But knowing the truth is one thing. Confronting it is a whole different story. She decides she needs to face David, once and for all, but not in a way he'd expect. Rather than an explosive confrontation, she plans her approach carefully. She doesn't want him to see her anger right away. Instead, she wants answers. She wants to know why, what pushed him to do this, and why he chose to betray her trust. And as hard as it is, there's a small part of her that hopes for a reason, something that would make this hurt a little less, though she knows it's unlikely. That night, when David walks in, Emily is waiting for him in the living room, sitting on the edge of the couch, calm and composed. David immediately senses something's wrong. There's a chill in the air, a stillness that makes him uneasy. He tries to play it cool, but she can see it in his eyes, the subtle shift, the worry flickering beneath the surface. "David, we need to talk," Emily says, her voice calm but firm. She gestures for him to sit across from her, and he does, visibly tense. There's silence for a moment, a thick, suffocating quiet as she searches his face for any sign of remorse, of guilt. "I know about you and Laura," she says finally, the words hanging heavy in the air. David's face drains of color. For a split second, she sees a flicker of shock, but then he quickly masks it, scrambling to cover his tracks. "Emily, it's not what you think," he says, his voice low, pleading. But she's done with the excuses. "Then tell me what it is, David, because I can't keep living like this, wondering and second-guessing. I need to know the truth," she says, her voice breaking slightly, but she holds her ground. David tries to explain, stumbling over his words, desperately trying to downplay the relationship with Laura. He insists that it was just emotional support, that it was never physical, that he just needed someone to talk to. But Emily sees through it. She knows the difference between friendship and the kind of connection they had, the kind of connection he used to share with her. With every excuse he gives, her anger grows, simmering just beneath the surface. She realizes he's still not being fully honest, still trying to manipulate her feelings, to twist the truth. And that's when she snaps. "You know, I wanted to believe you," she says, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and sadness. "I wanted to trust that what we had was real, that you respected me enough to at least tell me the truth. But you couldn't even do that. Do you have any idea what this has done to me?" David sits there, speechless, the weight of her words hitting him like a ton of bricks. He knows he's crossed a line, that there's no going back from this. But still, he tries to salvage what's left, to convince her that they can work through this, that it was just a mistake. But for Emily, it's too late. The betrayal is too deep, the hurt too raw. She realizes that staying with him would mean sacrificing her own self-respect, her own happiness. And she's done with that. She deserves better. She deserves someone who values her, who doesn't see her love as something to be taken for granted. As she stands up, ready to walk away, there's this sense of liberation, of freedom. She's finally taking control of her life, refusing to let his betrayal define her. David watches her go, helpless, knowing that he's lost the best thing he ever had. And for Emily, as painful as it is, she knows that this is the first step toward healing, toward finding herself again. Alright, that's where we'll pause for now. This story has taken quite the turn, but if you're as invested as I am, make sure to subscribe, like, and drop a comment. Let me know what you would do in Emily's shoes. Stay tuned to see how this all wraps up. Alright, let's get back into the heart of the story. As we dive deeper, things are getting more intense, emotions are at an all-time high, and secrets that were once hidden in the shadows are finally out in the open. Emily's decision to confront David has shaken their world, but there's more at play here. The fallout from this confrontation is just beginning, and the stakes are climbing higher with every passing moment. Now, Emily has made her stance clear. She's taking control, reclaiming her life after David's betrayal, and trying to move forward. But this isn't an easy road. Emily still wrestles with the echoes of their time together, the trust they built, and the love they once shared. And now David's reeling too. He's been stripped of his defenses, and he's beginning to face the weight of his choices, though he's not entirely ready to let go. Let's talk about where the tension really peaks. It's been a couple of weeks since their confrontation, and Emily has started making new routines. Time with friends, rediscovering old hobbies, and even looking for a new place. But one evening, just as she's about to wind down, there's a knock on her door. And, of course, it's David. His face is drawn, his eyes shadowed with regret. But there's also something desperate about him. It's clear he's been struggling with the fallout, that he's come looking for some kind of reconciliation, hoping to turn things around. He starts talking fast, pouring out all these apologies, almost like he's trying to rewrite what happened. He insists he never meant for it to go so far, that he was lost and confused. He even tries to paint himself as the victim of circumstance, claiming that his life was spiraling, and he needed someone to lean on. But for Emily, these words sound empty. She listens in silence, barely reacting, until finally, she breaks the quiet. "David," she says, her voice steady, but her gaze fierce. "This isn't about you anymore. You broke us. You made your choices, and you have to live with them. I found my peace, and it doesn't include you." David is stunned. He didn't expect her to be so resolute, so detached. There's a long, tense silence where he just stands there, the weight of her words settling on him, almost visibly crushing him. And as he leaves, Emily feels a strange mix of sorrow and relief. She's finally closed that door, physically and emotionally. This brings us to one of the story's most critical turning points. Despite her efforts to move forward, Emily's emotions are still all over the place. She's plagued by moments of self-doubt, questioning if she's truly okay or if this is just a phase. That's when she makes a life-changing decision. She decides to take a solo trip, a way to distance herself from the memories and the place that now feels tainted. Her journey is full of these moments of reflection and self-discovery, quiet moments where she's forced to confront her feelings, her insecurities, and the fear of starting over. She journals her thoughts, takes long walks through unfamiliar places, and slowly, bit by bit, she begins to feel like herself again. There's a powerful resilience building within her, a reminder of her own strength and independence. Meanwhile, David, back home, is unraveling. He begins to see just how deep of a hole he's dug himself into. He's haunted by memories of Emily, of everything he threw away, and this guilt is eating him alive. He's been trying to distract himself, but nothing fills the void she left behind. He's at his lowest point, and for the first time he realizes he's truly alone. Then comes the twist, a chance encounter. While Emily is on her trip, she meets someone who shows her kindness, someone who listens without judgment. It's refreshing, and she starts to feel a spark of something she hasn't felt in a long time. Hope. This new person isn't a replacement for what she lost, but rather a reminder that life goes on, that there's still love and kindness out there waiting for her. This moment is a game changer for Emily. It's not about jumping into a new relationship, but about seeing herself through someone else's eyes. She realizes that she's not broken, that her worth isn't tied to David or his mistakes. She's her own person, strong and capable, and she deserves happiness. Just as Emily is starting to find her balance, David makes one last attempt to reconnect. He calls her, desperately trying to convince her to meet him, to give him a chance to explain himself one last time. Against her better judgment, Emily agrees. There's a part of her that wants closure, to put this chapter behind her for good. When they meet, it's clear that David is still grappling with his guilt. He looks exhausted, almost defeated. He apologizes again, this time with a sincerity that Emily hadn't seen before. But it's too late. Emily has moved beyond the need for his validation. She listens, but her heart isn't in it. She's already on a different path, one that doesn't include him. David can sense it, and this is where the tension reaches its climax. There's this unspoken realization between them, that they're no longer the same people, that whatever they once shared has been irreparably damaged. Emily stands up, gives him one last look, and walks away without looking back. This climactic moment is where Emily truly breaks free, where she finally lets go of the weight of her past. It's a powerful scene, filled with raw emotion and closure. As she walks away, she feels a sense of peace, knowing that she's chosen herself, that she's ready to embrace a future without the shadows of her past. Emily has been making progress. rebuilding her life and finding strength she never knew she had. But one afternoon, as she's walking through her favorite park, she unexpectedly crosses paths with David. It's a fleeting moment, but enough to spark a flood of emotions within her. She feels her heart race, a mixture of anger, sadness, and that faint, unwelcome twinge of longing. Despite everything, he was once her person, and seeing him in such a familiar setting brings back memories she thought she'd let go of. David, on the other hand, is taken aback too. He tries to approach her, calling out her name, but Emily instinctively takes a step back, shaking her head. "David, please," she says, her voice firm. She doesn't want to revisit the pain, not now when she's come so far. But he's persistent, asking for just a few minutes to talk, to explain. This isn't a pleasant meeting. It's one thick with unresolved tension and a desperate need for closure. David's face is a mask of regret, and his voice trembles as he confesses his guilt once again. But instead of the anger Emily once felt, she now finds herself feeling indifferent. She listens, but there's a sense of detachment. The spark that once tied them together feels dim and distant, like something from another life. It's here, in this park, that Emily makes a pivotal decision. She realizes that her healing is complete, and she no longer needs David's validation or apology. As she walks away, there's a visible relief on her face, a weight lifted. She's finally free. Meanwhile, David's life is unraveling, and this encounter with Emily only magnifies his regret. He's been grappling with his choices, haunted by the loss of Emily and the realization that he's ruined something beautiful. But his own journey is more complicated. His path to redemption isn't as simple as just feeling sorry. He's hit rock bottom and is beginning to see the true consequences of his actions. One evening, we see David alone, surrounded by the remnants of his past life. It's clear that he's lost everything meaningful to him. He tries calling friends, but no one is there. He even considers calling Emily again, just to hear her voice, but he knows it would only make things worse. This is David's breaking point. He's forced to confront his demons and, for the first time, take accountability for his actions. It's a painful, raw moment, where he's finally honest with himself. And although it's a step towards self-awareness, it's not enough to bring Emily back or undo the damage he's done. After their encounter, Emily feels a renewed sense of purpose. She dives into new projects, spends more time with her friends, and even considers moving to a new city. There's a lightness in her now, a sense of excitement about the future that she hasn't felt in years. She's grown stronger, wiser, and more confident, and it shows in everything she does. Then, out of the blue, she gets an invitation to an art show from a mutual friend. At first, she's hesitant, knowing that this event might bring her face to face with people from her past, including some who know about her and David. But she decides to go, seeing it as an opportunity to fully reclaim her space. At the art show, she mingles, laughs, and realizes just how much she's changed. This Emily is radiant, someone who's no longer defined by her past relationship or the pain she endured. She meets new people, enjoys herself, and feels an overwhelming sense of freedom. And this is where the movie builds towards one of its most symbolic moments. In a climactic twist, Emily is introduced to a man who's been admiring the same painting she's looking at. A stranger with a kind smile and a gentle demeanor. There's an instant connection, one that feels natural and refreshing. They start talking, sharing stories, and for the first time, Emily feels a spark that isn't tied to any baggage or painful memories. The conversation is lighthearted and comfortable, a welcome change from the intensity she's grown used to. This new person isn't trying to be anything other than himself, and that simplicity resonates with her. She realizes that love doesn't have to be complicated or messy. It can be peaceful, grounding, and uplifting. As the night goes on, Emily and her new friend exchange numbers, promising to meet up again soon. It's a small, simple gesture, but it holds so much significance. This moment isn't about rushing into a new relationship. It's about Emily reclaiming her ability to trust and open her heart without fear. The next day, as Emily reflects on the evening, she feels a sense of closure that she didn't anticipate. She realizes that she's truly moved on, that David and the past are no longer a shadow over her life. She's ready for whatever comes next, with or without a relationship. Her happiness is her own, and she's finally learned to value herself above all else. And here's where the story reaches its emotional peak. Emily revisits her journal, looking back at all the entries from her journey. Each page tells a story of growth, pain, and resilience, and as she flips through, she feels a profound sense of gratitude. She's grateful for the lessons, even the hard ones, because they brought her to this place of peace and strength. In the final scenes, we see Emily packing her things, ready to embark on a new chapter. The camera lingers on her face as she takes one last look at her old apartment, a place that holds so many memories, both good and bad. And with a deep breath, she closes the door, leaving it all behind. This is the story of Emily, a story of heartbreak, healing, and the journey to self-love. It's a reminder that sometimes the most painful experiences can lead to the greatest growth. Emily's story teaches us that we don't need to hold on to people who don't value us and that it's okay to let go and start over. Thank you for watching and joining us on this journey. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more content like this, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you in the next one, because there's always another story waiting to be told. Ambles to find the right words. He starts with an apology, stumbling over each sentence as if even he can't believe the things he's done. But for Emily, these words feel hollow. They're too late and don't carry the weight she once craved. She listens, arms crossed, her gaze steady and unyielding. The hurt may still linger, but the need for his validation has faded. Her silence speaks volumes, and David can sense it. A shift he hadn't expected. Emily finally breaks the silence. David, I've moved on. I don't need an explanation or an apology. I needed that once, but not anymore. Her voice is calm, steady, and to David, it's like hearing a door close. He nods, defeated, realizing that his chance for redemption, at least in her eyes, is gone. With a final look, Emily turns and walks away, feeling the remnants of her old life fade with each step. And though a part of her is still healing, this moment becomes a powerful reminder that she's free. She no longer feels the ache or anger that used to consume her. Instead, she feels a quiet peace, a small victory in her journey forward. As Emily walks away from her encounter with David, a storm begins to brew beneath the surface of her seemingly peaceful life. The tension in her world escalates quickly when she discovers a letter slipped into her mailbox. It's from David, a last-ditch attempt to convey the words he couldn't say in person. But this isn't an ordinary apology. It's an emotional confession, a raw, unfiltered look into his thoughts and regrets, his reasons, and his desperation to reconcile with her, even if only for his own peace. Emily's heart races as she reads. His words pull her into a whirlwind of emotions. Hurt, anger, nostalgia, all colliding as she sits alone, letter in hand. She debates whether to throw it out, but curiosity keeps her reading. The letter reveals something she never expected. David's struggles, buried for so long, finally laid bare. He explains his inner battles, his deep-seated fears, and the flaws he was too proud to admit. It's a side of him she rarely saw, one she wasn't prepared for. And then, a turning point. David confesses that his betrayal wasn't just a moment of weakness but a consequence of his own self-destructive habits. It's a painful admission, and for a brief moment, Emily feels empathy, an unwelcome sense of understanding. Yet she's torn. Despite his honesty, she can't ignore the fact that he shattered her trust. The letter ends with him expressing that, no matter the outcome, he hopes she can find peace and forgiveness. Not for his sake but for hers. With a deep breath, she folds the letter, setting it aside. This isn't closure, but it's a revelation, one that forces her to confront parts of herself she had suppressed, the parts that had loved him once so fully. She's left feeling vulnerable and angry, but more than that, she's left with a choice. Meanwhile, David's world is unraveling in its own way. His attempts to salvage his life post-Emily have been rocky, marred by regret and self-blame. He's faced his own share of consequences, and it's becoming clearer to him that his actions have set him on a lonely path. This isn't just about losing Emily. It's about facing himself and the mistakes that keep haunting him. The letter was his attempt to move on, but deep down he knows it's a weak apology. It's a bandage on a wound that won't heal. He's grappling with the realization that he may never truly redeem himself in her eyes. As the days pass, the impact of the letter lingers. Emily feels a strange sense of relief mixed with a renewed sense of purpose. She's learning to forgive, not him but herself. Her journey isn't about erasing the pain but embracing it as part of her growth. The emotional weight begins to lift, and she starts to focus on what lies ahead. But just as Emily feels she's finding her balance, life throws another twist her way. During a quiet evening at her favorite coffee shop, she notices a familiar face in the crowd. It's David again. This time he's not alone. He's with someone new, laughing, seemingly at ease. The sight sends a jolt through her, a mixture of relief and lingering sadness. She realizes that this is what moving on looks like. Messy and imperfect but necessary. It's a defining moment for her, one that pushes her to truly let go. In that instant, Emily decides to reclaim her life, not as a reaction to David's actions but as an affirmation of her own strength. She walks out of the coffee shop with a quiet determination, a renewed sense of self. This is her climax, a personal victory over the lingering ghosts of her past. It's not about David or the mistakes he made. It's about her resilience, her ability to rebuild despite the heartache. In the end, Emily's journey is one of self-discovery, healing, and empowerment. She chooses to live for herself, to embrace the lessons of her past without letting them define her future. And as she moves forward, she knows she's leaving behind a chapter that, while painful, taught her more about herself than she could have ever imagined. As Emily leaves the coffee shop, thinking she's ready to move on, an unexpected surge of anger rises within her. Seeing David happy and carefree feels like salt in a barely healed wound, a reminder of the hurt he caused and the emotional turmoil she endured. She realizes that while she's been processing and healing, David's been moving on, apparently with ease. It's an unfairness that rattles her, and she's not sure what to do with the rage that simmers beneath her calm exterior. Driven by this frustration, Emily goes for a long, late-night walk through the city. The streets are quiet, the hum of distant traffic mingling with her chaotic thoughts. It's in these moments alone that she questions everything again. Her choices, her pain, and what she wants from her future. She wonders if she'll ever fully let go of the betrayal. As she walks, the memories return in waves. The laughter they shared, the small moments of affection, and the ultimate heartache that severed them. She knows she's made progress, but it's moments like these that make her question how far she's really come. Then, a revelation strikes her. The emotions swirling inside aren't just about David. They're about herself. Her anger, her hurt, even her nostalgia. All are pieces of a puzzle she's been afraid to examine too closely. She realizes that forgiving him isn't about excusing his actions. It's about freeing herself from the chains of the past, from the resentment that's been holding her back. In this pivotal moment, Emily makes a decision. She'll confront David one last time, not to rehash old wounds but to close this chapter with finality. The next day, Emily reaches out to David, requesting a meeting. Her message is brief but clear, and David, sensing the seriousness, agrees. They meet in a quiet park, a neutral space that holds no memories for either of them. David approaches cautiously, aware that this isn't a reconciliation. There's a weight between them, a silent understanding that this is the end. Emily doesn't hold back. She speaks with a calm, collected strength, finally able to put words to the pain she endured, the trust he shattered, and the self-doubt that lingered long after. As she recounts her journey, David listens, his face a mixture of regret and resignation. It's clear he didn't fully understand the depth of the damage he caused, and his guilt becomes palpable. This confrontation becomes the story's emotional peak, a powerful, raw exchange where both characters lay bare their emotions. Emily's words hit hard, but she remains composed, her tone steady. It's not about revenge or closure for his sake. It's about reclaiming her voice, her narrative, and refusing to be defined by this betrayal any longer. David, in turn, offers a quiet apology. It's not a plea for forgiveness but a recognition of the pain he caused. He admits he was selfish, blinded by his own insecurities, and he understands now that he lost something irreplaceable. But Emily isn't there for an apology. She's there for herself. And as they part ways, she feels a newfound freedom, a weight lifted from her shoulders. This isn't about him anymore. It's about her journey, her growth, and her ability to stand tall, even after everything she's endured. With this final confrontation, Emily's arc reaches a climax. She's faced the person who hurt her, confronted her own vulnerabilities, and emerged stronger. Walking away from David feels like a victory, not over him but over the version of herself that once felt incomplete without him. She realizes she's not the same person she was before, and that realization fills her with a quiet sense of pride. As she leaves the park, a smile creeps onto her face, a small, genuine expression of relief. She knows there will still be moments of doubt, flashes of pain, but they no longer define her. Emily is ready to move forward, not as someone's partner but as her own person, whole and complete. This is her story, her journey, and she's finally ready to embrace it on her own terms. As Emily walks away from the park, the weight she's carried for so long starts to feel lighter. She's finally let go of the anger and resentment that tethered her to a painful past, and in doing so, she feels more free than she's felt in years. The person she sees reflected in shop windows and passing car mirrors isn't someone damaged or defined by betrayal. She's simply Emily, resilient, whole, and finally at peace with herself. In the following weeks, Emily's life begins to bloom in ways she hadn't expected. She takes up painting, an old hobby she'd abandoned in the midst of her relationship. Pouring her emotions onto the canvas, she finds a new form of expression, one that brings her a sense of fulfillment that's all her own. Through this, she realizes that her journey wasn't just about healing from a broken relationship. It was about rediscovering parts of herself she'd long neglected. Her friendships deepened too. Emily had always been close to her friends, but in the wake of her experience, she feels a new level of gratitude for the people who stood by her side when she was at her lowest. Late nights spent laughing, heart-to-heart conversations over wine, and spontaneous road trips remind her that love isn't limited to romance. It exists in the bonds she shares with those who truly know her, those who never abandoned her, even when she doubted her own worth. One day, Emily receives an unexpected message from a local art gallery interested in showcasing some of her paintings. Her initial reaction is disbelief. She hadn't considered her art worthy of display. But her friends encourage her to take the leap, and slowly, she starts to believe in herself and her talents again. The gallery exhibition becomes a symbolic moment for her, a way of stepping into a new chapter, embracing herself fully without reservation or fear of judgment. At the exhibition, surrounded by friends and strangers admiring her work, Emily feels a deep sense of pride. Her journey has come full circle. She realizes she's no longer the woman defined by her past heartbreak, but rather someone who's reclaimed her sense of self and independence. She's living her life for herself, guided by her own dreams and aspirations rather than by the expectations or validation of others. As the evening winds down, a friend nudges her and points out someone in the crowd, a man admiring one of her paintings. She chuckles, brushing off the hint of flirtation from her friend. For now, she's content with where she is. If romance is in her future, she'll welcome it, but she knows she doesn't need it to feel complete. For the first time, she feels truly happy just being on her own. In these final moments, the story settles into a feeling of closure. Emily's journey wasn't easy, but every hardship, every tear, and every moment of doubt brought her to where she stands now, a stronger, wiser version of herself. She's found peace not in another person but within, learning that self-love and forgiveness were the keys to her healing all along. And so, as we leave Emily to continue her life with newfound confidence and purpose, we're reminded that sometimes the hardest battles we face are the ones within ourselves. But as Emily has shown, Even the deepest wounds can heal with time, courage, and a little bit of faith in ourselves. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more videos just like this one. There's so much more to come. See you in the next story.